So to introduce myself, so my name is Herta Gatter. I'm the chair of Stamford Housing Co-op. I just recently stepped up because we didn't have a chair. So it's not really a position of power, more a position of I want to do stuff for the cooperative movement. As you can see, I'm also the co-founder of Cash, which is a CLT, and I'll talk about that in a second. And lastly, I also wanted to kind of mention that I'm also kind of professionally, I guess, working in this field. I'm an urban planner, kind of placemaking consultant, I guess, and I work a lot with different housing associations and local authorities, and none of them really know about co-ops. So I think we need to invite those guys as well into these rooms. So my job is a bit easier. Rich?
I'm Richard, and I'm a member of Stamford, and I've been there for about 5 or 6 years. And as you can see, I've occupied quite a few different roles. Not any at the moment, mainly because I'm a PhD student that I'm trying to focus on that. But that's quite indicative of Stamford, where people dip in and out of participation quite often.
So yeah, starting with 68. So I was pleased that I got the brief and to talk about the same things as Francesco. I put this painting here. I don't know if anyone knows it. It's by a Catalan painter, kind of trying to depict the student protests in Paris in 68. And it used to be my favorite painting when I was young and radical and before I stepped into the kind of cooperative world and corporate world. So the beginnings of Stamford, 68, so the same year. So obviously this movement has come from this background of students organizing, students wanting to change the world. But I guess in a slightly less radical way, has become, the origins of Stamford is it's not that radical. It was something that was very much supported by the government. So on this picture, you have John Hand, so the guy who wrote that book that Francesco mentioned, and he was kind of instrumental in starting Stamford, and he's there walking down, Stamford Street with Prince Philip. So, as much as we would need that kind of bottom-up approach, sometimes a bit of help from other agencies can also be helpful. And I guess, especially in 68, when you literally didn't have a culture of co-ops, I guess, apart from the old Rochdale guys, no legislation, not really kind of any support of any kind or funding or anything for co-ops. So none of these events, the Young Corporators Network, none of these things. So you really needed that kind of support. Now we have a lot more to draw from, but we probably still need some level of support from the government. So anyway, in 73, after lobbying and a lot of organization and work, the government has agreed to support a pilot project in Southeast London, where Stamford now stands, and it is the oldest purpose-built housing co-op in England. And there's a lot of other co-ops that were started around that time in Southeast London. But most of them started as squats and then were eventually kind of purchased from the council. It is really one of a kind, especially to build on this scale. So we have 120 tenants, so a very large project. So I don't know, Rich, if you want to jump in and talk a bit more about the beginnings and where we are now.
The history of Stamford tends to be shared verbally and tends to often be quite hazy at times. This year's our 50th year, and there's a lot of ideas to try and sort of have a big heritage party and apply for funding to do that as well. It started on a piece of land next to a train track, and the story goes that the people that were behind the project were able to navigate this complex moment where the council were not quite able to give permission. They weren't really wanting to, and the builders were waiting for the council to give permission before they could start building. So they convinced, and this is before email, of course, and they invited the builders down. They convinced them that they had got permission from the council, and they also invited the local press And then when the council came down to stop what was going on, they noticed that the press were there, and they were like asking them why, how such a good project had come to be. And the council switched around and said, yes, of course, this is what we had always intended. So this is Sandford next to the train track. So it's actually a piece of land that was neglected, and as we're often told by people that have lived there for ages, it's sort of toxic land from like a post-war situation. And you can see we've got quite a lot of solar panels, and we are, as a purpose-built co-op, we are a private street. We're publicly accessible, and we welcome people to come and stop by. And you can also see a mural on the end. So we've got 14 houses as part of a terrace, 2 terraces, and then at the back we've got some single occupancy flats as well, with the plan to try and make one of those flats a wheelchair accessible flat soon. At the front there's also a meadow. It's quite hard for me to try and point to it without some sort of like laser point. Oh, I have got one.
I think the red thing should be pointed.
Can I see that? Yeah, okay. So that's the mural that's been there. That's got Margaret Thatcher riding a rocket. And we've got what's called the meadow here. And right there is what's called House Zero. And that's our meeting space. And next to it, we've got a couple of containers. And there's a wood workshop and also the room assessments workshop where we have like lots of supplies and light bulbs and fittings that we can replace things with. Want to go on? Or?
Oh yeah, these are just a few more pictures to go from the bird's eye view to actually how it feels to live there. So you can see the row of houses on the top left, and we also have a bike shed that was built, I think, maybe 10 years ago-ish. That looks really cool from the outside, and you can kind of like sit on top of it. Really nice place, and yeah, I think most people in Sandford have a bike, so 100 bikes had to go somewhere, so that was so really needed. We also have a bike workshop, so yeah, we have lots of little kind of units and things where people can do work together. And then those 2 are just pictures from my house, so that's our kind of kitchen in the middle, and that was someone's room that he was really good at sort of building stuff, so like he kind of made his bed and everything. So yeah, in the kind of same way in that a lot of other people here have said it's really nice to be able to kind of do those modifications.
What's really important to point out actually is that, as you can see here, the space in front of the buildings was just dirt almost, right? And then we look here and it's very green. And that bike shed there, and then here is the beginnings of a very beautiful garden. And they would have been part of proposals that members would have put forward, and collectively they would have embarked on those projects. And that bike shed there houses 93 bikes, I think, at least. And that was put together by an architect who lived at Sandford using reclaimed railway sleepers and would have got planning permission from the local council. So one of the things that Sandford has got is we've got reserves, but we've also got some pots of money where people can actually apply to put together projects. And I was one of a small group of people that helped build a climbing wall as part of that. So there are little initiatives that we have. And those bikes that are hanging on the wall there are, there's 3 bikes that we have that are open access. So if people need a bike temporarily, we've got a key system and people can access those.
Okay, so I guess maybe just kind of going back to a bit of history, and you can see Margaret Thatcher there. Is that so? Sandford started as a place for students, or at least for graduates, and it was really built to be like that. So you can see that we have these 14 houses, and there's 7 or 8 people living in all of them, sharing one kitchen, like quite a big kitchen, and 2 bathrooms, 2.5 bathrooms. So it's very much kind of nice student hall vibes. And I guess what happened is that people just didn't move out. So they wanted to stay in. So they changed the rules, decided that, okay, we're going to lift the age gap. We're going to lift this restriction on just students. We want to stay. And people tend to stay. Like I think now we don't have any students, and most people tend to be like from their late 20s, and probably our oldest tenant is like 70, I guess.
There's one person that's been there since the beginning.
Yeah. So I guess, why did that happen? Because it got really expensive to move out. So you live in a room in southeast London that costs less than £300 a month. Why would you want to move anywhere? The reason why people move are the 3B. So it's either people have a baby, so they want to start a family. They buy a boat, because you can just get a boat for 20k, or they move to Bristol because they just kind of fed up with London. So yeah, those are the three reasons why people leave Sandford. But yeah, so I think most people probably stay, for maybe 2 years, 3, 5, 10. And then there's a few people who kind of just, stay there all of their lives. And yeah, like this guy who's just been there for the whole time. So I guess my question to everyone here is, what's the life beyond the student co-op? You have this, really nice setup, but when you want to move on, or when you want to, maybe have a slightly different life, where do you go? And that's a real issue that we need to answer. So I guess this is where cash comes in. So the community interest that I'm part of, and I think the reason why we set up is this idea that there's a lot of existing co-ops who are not really talking to each other, and there's a real need for creating more affordable housing in London, obviously elsewhere as well. But it's very it's really difficult to find a place to live in London. So we wanted to kind of come together and start building or strengthening a network between these co-ops who don't really talk to each other. So people kind of be surprised by this number that you have 300 co-ops in London and 26 just in Lewisham. And if you try and go and find them, most of them don't even have a phone number or a website or anything. So the only way you can get in is if you know. So we wanted to kind of step in and activate these co-ops and kind of try help build new ones. So as a community land trust, our model is that we want to kind of facilitate the purchase of land and help co-ops kind of build their own projects, and then create this network that in a sort of ideal world would then kind of have this built-in structure that new co-ops then kind of spend some money that goes back to the kind of umbrella organization to then start new co-ops. So community land trust, in contrast to co-ops, are for the benefit of the community. And I think this is, I love co-ops. Most of my life is about co-ops, but I think it's important to kind of recognize their issues, like these co-ops in London who, they don't really have any relationship to their communities. So I think building these structures, like some of the other organizations that have been mentioned today, that create a network between co-ops is really important. So yeah, just really quickly kind of getting a bit more into the detail of how we want to work. So we don't currently own any land. That's a kind of our goal that we've been working towards for the last few years. But cash would essentially kind of raise the money and kind of do some of the pre-development work and be a freeholder of the land, and then would lease that land to other co-ops. So in a similar way, like the Brighton example, and then the co-op would then kind of raise money to do their development, whether that's refurbishment or new build. And I guess coming back to this idea of creating a network that's actually kind of inclusive and diverse is something that we kind of we find this like a really important question to answer, and something that we really want to kind of collaborate on with different co-ops, different individuals who are interested in co-ops and different partners. So we recently launched a research and learning project where we are in process of applying for funding to secure probably 10 funded places for 10 different people from different co-ops, probably a mix of existing co-op members and kind of people who are wanting to set up co-ops to think about these issues together. So a bit cheeky, but I put a QR code there if anyone wants to donate to our GoFundMe or find me afterwards. But the idea would be that we would run a kind of pilot project with some partners. So we're speaking to some design companies like Arab and the GLA. I don't know, different people have expressed interest. But we would kind of fund the first one with donations from co-ops, and then have a kind of a cycle of 5 kind of workshops exploring different ideas, and then allowing people to kind of do research themselves and go and kind of implement the learnings in that context. So this would be very much a kind of action-based participatory approach rather than a kind of we provide a report at the end kind of thing, which is important, but also people in co-ops often don't have the time to kind of read through guidance documents. So we really want to take a sort of active approach in this. So yeah, these are some kind of contact details if you want to get in touch with me. And I forgot to put your email on there, sorry, but I'm sure you can find Rich afterwards. But yeah, follow us. Cash, you can follow. You know, we have a newsletter, we have Instagram and everything. You can be more involved. We have probably about 10 active members and 40 supporters and maybe 300-400 people on our mailing list. There's many different ways you can get involved. So approach us and happy to chat always.
Thank you.